This is Building Systems Information video number 2. The first I'm going to speak about is the best belt sander, which speaks to the best big belt sanders, what's the best belt sander, and best power belt sanders. This type of sander is suited to removing material quickly from a flat surface and has a noticeable surface flattening effect. The components are main handle, trigger switch, front handle, front pulley, belt, shoe, air intake slots, rear pulley for fast wood removal. Operate the sander at about a 45-degree angle to the grain direction using a fairly coarse belt. This produces a smooth final finish. Use the sander parallel to the grain, first with a medium and then fine belt. The cost of the tool is dependent on capacity, power, and attachments. Most use sandpaper that is 3 or 4 inches wide, but the average for home use is 3 inches wide. Ensure that the sander has a high-low switch and is useful in the polishing metal and wood. Another useful attachment is a dust pickup system. The belt sander produces a lot of dust, and the pickup attachments are very handy indeed. They act as a mini vacuum cleaner. Considering when purchasing a belt sander, easy to use controls, simple procedure to remove and install belts, a means of adjusting one pulley so that the belt tracks in a straight line, and a not too difficult means of installing new brushes. Next, we will be speaking about the best jack plane. The best jack plane speaks to tested jack planes, planes for the beginner, and how to use a jack plane. This jack plane information states that this tool is directly related to the electric block plane, but does the work of a hand plane with less effort, and produces a smooth job on knots and wavy grain. It functions by means of a revolving cutter that turns at about 22,000 RPM. The components of the tool are: there's a handle, an elevating knob, a switch, motor, fence lock, handle, and a fence. The plane has a fence which projects down from one side perpendicular to the bottom. If you are planing the edge of a board or door, this fence is held against the side of the work. This produces a perfect square edge cut. The fence can be removed for surface planing of wide areas, and when tilted, it can be used for beveling. To plane a long board, clamp the piece of work securely and grasp the jack plane firmly. Then use down as well as side pressure to keep the guide snug against the work. To make a bevel cut across the grain, set the fence at the desired angle. Use the same procedure as explained above for planing a long board, but reduce down the pressure to front. This will minimize chipping at the end of the cut. As an alternate method, you can clamp screw work at the end of your work. I'll be just a minute here whilst I find my place. Taking longer than I thought. Here we are. Now we're going to speak to block plane sharpening. Block plane sharpening. Sharpening with hand planes. Plane sharpening jig. Sharpening a plane blade. Block plane sharpening speaks to sharpening hand planes, plane sharpening jig, and sharpening a plane blade. This site describes sharpening as well the uses of an electric block. This tool is directly related to the electric jack plane, but is smaller, lighter, and easier to use. The block plane may be used with one hand leaving the other free to support this work. This tool can be used for surface planing, such as planing the inside of a window and line. It can quickly fix a stuck door. Components are: there's a handle, motor, cutter depth adjustment, cutter guard, brush cap, cutter lock path pin, cutter shaft, cutter, cutter washer, cutter bolt, wrench, adjustable guide fence, and a fence wing nut. Block plane sharpening procedures. Using a magnifying glass, inspect the cutting edge for burrs and ticks. Using an electric bench grind wheel with a medium grit, remove the burrs and nicks. Firmly hold the blade to be sharpened bevel side up and move it to the right side, right to left against the grinding wheel, ensuring that the cutting edge is held square to the wheel. Then turn over the blade to bevel side down and repeat the previous action, holding the blade at a 25-degree angle matching the bevel. Using a fine grit stone with a few drops of oil on it, finish the edge. Hold the bevel flat against the stone. Pull the blade back towards you and lift at the end of the stroke. Wipe the blade clean every 3 strokes and clean and again oil the stone. Once again, drag the blade across the stone with bevel side up to remove any burrs that might exist. Re-examine the blade using your magnifying glass. Now we're going to speak to the Chain Saw Sharpening Guide. The Chain Saw Sharpening Guide speaks to how to sharpen a chainsaw. That chainsaw sharpening for beginners. This guide describes chainsaw components, sharpening techniques, and most importantly, safe operating procedures. It is suggested that for average use, a gas or electric powered chainsaw with a 12 to 6-inch bar or blade would be a good choice. A typical saw can be cut through a 6-inch hardwood log in seconds. It is suggested that gasoline-powered saws have a special clutch which prevents the chain from moving while the motor is idling. When the throttle is open, the clutch engages and drives the chain. The components of this device are a shroud lock, carburetor adjusting screws, fuel pump, chain brake, chain sprocket cover, chain catcher, chain tensioner, bumper spike, guide bar, saw chain, chain tensioner, adjusting wheel, handle of wing nut, oil filler cap, muffler, the front handguard, the front handlebar, a spark plug boot, a starter grip, fuel oil filler cap, and a master control lever, and a throttle trigger interlock, a rear handle, rear handguard. You must first determine the size or gauge of your saw's chain, and you will need to buy either a rotary grind saw or chain saw file, rat tail file, that matches your blade. Since there are several types of chainsaw teeth, the grindstone or file you choose must be the correct diameter for your saw. Typical sizes are 3/16, 5/32, and 7/32 inches in diameter. The Chain Saw Sharpening Guide states you must clean the chain. You may use mineral spirits or a commercial degreasing detergent to remove oil, dirt, and debris from your chain. Do not flood or get excessive cleaner on the engine or other components, since some of these products can damage the plastic housing or other parts. The Chain Saw Sharpening Guide states you must inspect the chain for damaged or worn links and teeth. Individual teeth may become chipped, broken, or bent, making them dangerous to use. It is suggested the top plate should be at least 1/4 inch in length. If it is shorter than this, there is a risk it will break while operating your saw. Replace any damaged chains. The Chain Saw Sharpening Guide states, for sharpening, place your saw on a solid surface or clamp the blade in a vise. The saw must be stable and the blade must be supported in a stationary manner to fill your jaw safely and accurately. Clamping the bar in a vise with the jaws, holding the bar and allowing the chain to rotate freely is the preferred method of holding it. You must locate the leading cutter. This will be the shortest cutter on the chain. If all the cutters seem to be the same length, you may start anywhere. The main concern is to file each cutter so the flat on top of the cutter is very nearly the same length, so that they each cut away the same amount of wood as they pass through the cut. Note which tooth you start on with some type of work. The Chain Saw Sharpening Guide suggests you set your file in the notch on the front of the cutter. This is the angled tooth on the front of the flat surface of the chain link. The curve of the file should fit the curve of the face of the cutting tip, and the top of the file should be nearly flush with the top of the tooth. Place the file at the same angle that the cutter is ground or filed to begin with. The standard angle is about 25 degrees on most saws. Slide the file across the face of the cutter using a moderate twisting motion to disturb metal chips that are removed. Push the file from the short side of the angle toward the long point. This should leave a smoother cutting surface. Then work each tooth with the same angle from one side of the cabin around the loop. As you progress around the chain, you'll want to spin it so the teeth that you are filing are on the flat top side of your bar. Reverse the saw to the other side and proceed around the unfiled teeth angled in the other direction. Keep an eye on the length of each flat top of the cutter. Check the clearance of the depth of the rakers, which are the curved hook-shaped lengths between the cutters. They should clear each cutting edge about 1/10 of an inch lower than the cutter. This gauges the amount of chip that the cutter removes on each pass through the wood. A special tool that is laid on top of the blade is available from chainsaw dealers or hardware stores. If the gauge is too high and must be filed, this tool protects the adjacent tooth as you file the gauge down. File any rakers that interfere with the cutter, that means that are too high, with a flat mill bastard file. Oil your chain. Saturate and soak with oil. Check the tension and you should be ready to cut once again. A safety considerations chain saw sharpening guide. A chainsaw is without a doubt the most dangerous power tool in use today. More injuries are caused to the average user than any other tool. When you purchase a chainsaw, the manufacturer will provide you with safe operating procedures. It is a must that you review these procedures before operating. Children should never be allowed to operate this piece of equipment. Wear clothing that fits snugly but allows for freedom of movement with no binding. Definitely no scarves or jewelry or long hair. Wear safety boots, safety hat, safety shield or glasses, hearing protection, and heavy-duty non-slip leather gloves. When transporting the saw, always engage the chain brake and attach the chain scabbard. Always carry by the handlebar. Never refuel the saw when the motor is hot, and when starting, move at least 10 feet away from where the saw was refueled. Never let the machine run unattended. Remember that the operator is legally responsible for accidents with the chainsaw. Ensure you have a firm and stable footing before beginning work, and never work alone. Do not smoke while using the chainsaw. Be very wary and aware of kickback. Hold the saw firmly with both hands. Always cut at full throttle. Never cut several limbs at once. Do not fell trees unless you have specialized training. This is a very dangerous procedure. Do not limb trees unless you have specialized training. Felling and limbing should be left to the professionals who do this for a living. And on to the next subject, which will be combination discs and belt sanders. This speaks to combination disc belt sanders, disc belt sander combos, belt disc sander, orbit sanders. Combination disc and belt sanders speaks to a disc belt sander combo, belt disc sander, and orbit sander. These sanders are fast-cutting tools that will smooth, trim, and shape wood. The components as such: there's a switch, a meter gauge, disc, fence, belt, tracking adjustment, meter gauge, slot. The table at the sanding disc tilts from level to 45 degrees and is slotted to fit a meter gauge. It is suggested that to achieve a perfect fit in cabinet work, the parts should start slightly oversized and then bring them to a precise fit on the sander table. Use a coarse belt for major trimming and a fine belt for a final fit. Due to the fact that the fast-cutting disc sander cuts across the grain, surfaces to be stained or left natural should get their final sanding parallel to the grain on the belt sander. The convex surface where the belt runs over the end rollers can do external curve sanding. The entire belt assembly can be tilted up to a vertical position for convenience in using the sander on more bulky work. Sanding on the disc can be done freehand. holding the work so that the rotating disc forces it down toward the table. External curves can be sanded on the rounded area of the belt where it passes over the pulley. It is suggested that the work keep moving. When sanding flat areas on the belt sander, keep the work at a slight angle to the belt. Remove the fence to sand work wider than the belt. Now, 20 minutes of me is enough for any one video. We will start new suggestions on video number 3. Thank you. Goodbye.